All right, I'll call the meeting to order. Meeting of the Carver Select Board for Tuesday, August 15th, 2023. This meeting is being cablecast by Area 58 Community Access Media, Channel 15, and will be posted by Area 58 on YouTube as soon as possible. There are openings on several committees. Please refer to the front page on our website for a listing and application. If we could all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Hoffman, if you could read our community prayer.
Sure. Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that make us all that we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially, we lift our prayers for all the citizens of our community that we've been allowed to serve, that they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek, and keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. All right, as always, the first item on our agenda this evening is citizens' participation. And just to be clear, this is not for King Richard's Fair. If the people have questions about King Richard's Fair, they'll have an opportunity to ask those questions after the chief makes his presentation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak about something? All right, seeing no one, the next item on our agenda is the appointment of election workers. Mr. Fennessy, did the town clerk plan on joining us for this?
I'm not sure if she's coming.
Okay, that's fine. I'll read the proposed 2023 election workers. Geraldine Carter, unenrolled. Geraldine Gavoni, unenrolled. Joanne Mayette, unenrolled. Mary Ross, a Democrat. Sandra Tucker, unenrolled. Janice McArdle, unenrolled. Jeffrey DeMora, unenrolled. Pamela Riccio, unenrolled. Deborah Porter, unenrolled. Patricia Batson, Republican. Patricia Richards, unenrolled. Susan Smith, unenrolled. Christine Sylvia, unenrolled. Eileen Russos, unenrolled. Donna Vaughn, unenrolled. Lori Harris, unenrolled. Patricia Lake, unenrolled. Amy McCain, Democrat. And Marie Zweigman, unenrolled. Are there any questions from the board on this? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve these election workers?
I move that we approve the election workers named.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Next is an update from our police chief, Chief Dufely, regarding King Richard's Fair traffic pattern changes and concerns. Welcome back, Chief.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for all your hard work. You and everybody that's worked on this. We appreciate all your help, and I know the residents do as well.
Thank you, sir.
And just to be clear, we did reach out and invite a representative of King Richard's Fair to join us as well this evening. It doesn't appear that anyone is joining us, but we did extend the invitation.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having me here again. As we're approaching that time of year again, we figured it'd be a good time to update on where we're at. Over the past year, our committee, our group, with Mr. Fennessy and Fire Chief, EMS Chief, Mr. Walsh, John Woods, and representatives of the fair, we've worked on the problem again this year of what happens when we fill up 58 with cars and there's nowhere for them to go. I think we all have a pretty clear understanding of what happens when we do that, when too many tickets are sold and the parking lots fill up and there's no place to put them. We saw what that did to the town last year with plugging up 58, with the time we tried to park at Edaville Railroad with people walking up 58, provided for a very dangerous situation, a very trying situation, a very frustrating situation for residents and for customers, and needed correction. Last year was the first year we had put in place the traffic pattern that went for about 1.2 miles that let us stack a lot of traffic, which did help considerably. And we also made some changes to how we get cars into the parking lot. So that, we resolved a lot of problems by doing that, but we weren't able to resolve the problem of too many cars for the parking lots that the fair has. Working with the fair this year in discussing how we get to a point where we don't have that happen, we've encouraged them, and they've agreed and worked with us to change their ticketing sales program to an online program that limits the number of ticket sales per day, caps them at what they feel will be an appropriate number to help us not have a recurrence of what happened last year, and lets people purchase tickets in advance. So they're saying that that's gone pretty well this year. They've got a lot of people purchasing in September that they didn't have before because they changed their pricing scheme to try to adjust some of the people who end up coming in October at the end of the fair. That seems when the big crowds come, and move them to September when we have a lot less people coming to the fair. So they did work on that. I'm hearing what they've told us, and we really won't be able to see what happens until we put this into effect. But they certainly do understand that that's a key component that we have to control. We have to know, or we have to be able to control how many people come every day so that we can plan for that. So working together, I think that we'll be able to use the data from this year to make even greater improvements to the whole plan. But in anticipation that we may still run over from the parking lots, the fair, I just talked with Superintendent Neef today, has worked with Superintendent Neef to make arrangements to be able to use some of the parking area at the high school that he feels he has available, and to hire school buses and school bus drivers to be able to be on standby to be ready in case something happens like that.
And not to interrupt you, but just to be clear, the fair is hiring those bus drivers. We're not paying, the town is not paying for those bus drivers. That's being paid by King Richard's Fair.
Yes, that is correct. So
Thank you.
all of these expenses are borne by the fair, not by the town of Carver. As we mentioned last year, we had a couple of times when we couldn't get officers in, and we had to use some of our officers on overtime, but we're hopefully have corrected that this year as well. We made some changes to the to what we pay our officers to work the details, and hopefully we'll be able to encourage the number that we need from out of town to come and help us again this year. So we're hoping that won't be a problem. But yes, all the expenses regarding the buses or the parking lots are borne by the fair. We worked through the program and how we would get people over there. We looked at, they worked with me to look at this number of signs and the type of signs we wanted to have to be able to change the direction of traffic from the parking lots to the alternate parking lots. They've looked at a scheme of being able to contact ticket holders via email or text to let them know that a change has occurred as to where they're going to park so they can make those arrangements. We've made arrangements to borrow a couple additional electric signboards, like the blue signboard that we have out there from Mattapoisett. So I believe we have a good plan in place to deal with that. I'm not going to make promises that I can't keep, so I'm going to tell you that I'm going to promise you we're going to do the best we can this year, as we always have. But I do believe that the fair has worked with us to get to a place where we get to a number of people coming to the fair that is reasonable and doesn't cause those problems. There will be traffic. We still bring a lot of people into town every weekend. There definitely will be traffic. But if we work with them to keep it to a reasonable number, and we have a plan in place that if that number is, if people buy enough tickets and those numbers are bigger than those parking lots can handle, and we can switch over to the alternate parking lots, I do believe that we will have a better solution this year than we have had in the past. The parking lots that we're talking about using at Carver Square and at the high school don't lend themselves as well to people walking from there either. And again, that talking about having signage in place so that people know when they park there to wait at a bus stop for a bus to come and pick them up, I think will be incredibly helpful. We lost, I wouldn't say lost control, but we didn't have the control over people parking in the parking lot at Edaville last year because it's not a lined parking lot. They didn't have enough help to be there, and there was no signs to indicate what people should do. So when they were waiting for buses for a while, they decided to start walking up. We've addressed that problem with signage and with people, and I believe that the lined parking lots at Carver Square and at the high school will make it easier for people to find parking spaces and see where the signage is and where the bus stop is and get in and out. So I believe that based on a lot of the hard work that everybody put in this year, we will see a better result this year. Again, I think we'll see traffic. People like to come to the fair. But as long as we can keep that traffic moving, we won't have the problems we experienced last year. As long as we can give alternate parking lots with good signage and direction, we won't have people walking down 58. As long as we can keep those parking lots full, we won't have people parking on 58. Those are the problems we needed to address last year. There are safety issues and there are frustrating issues for residents, and we want to come up with a plan that alleviates that. And I believe that the fair is cooperative with us and understands that it is their responsibility to make sure that happens, or the blame lies with them on that.
Are the alternate parking lots, are they open every day the fair is open, or will they open at specific times after the lot is full?
Oh, yes, there'll be specific key points when they'll open, when we have a certain number of cars in the parking lot. And that's going to be a fluid decision that we have to make depending on how long it takes us to set up. We're going to have the signs, everything ready to go, but there's still a transition from parking at the fair site and to parking at the alternate site. So those are fluid decisions that we're going to have to learn as we move through, as to when we move to those. But we have a pretty good idea of once the parking lots in the fair are A, B, and C, and when we stop filling, we're filling 2 parking lots, A and B at the same time. As A fills up, we switch over to filling B and C at the same time. When B gets to C gets to a certain point, then we'll be making a decision to move the signs, change the signs around, and start switching to the alternate parking lots. If we don't need to move to those, we won't have to. There is a plan in place with the school for them to talk to the bus drivers and deal with whether they have to cancel buses or not, or whether they're going to need the buses. But
One thing I noticed at the last meeting we had, where we had a representative from King Richard's Fair, I believe it was AMA, but I had requested that they put wording on their website regarding, hey, there's no on-street parking, and and I reviewed their website today. They did put that up there, and the wording I thought was very good, but it's sort of buried down at the bottom of their informational page. And I think perhaps if you or Mr. Fennessy could reach out to them, just ask them to maybe bold that. They do have some things on their website that are bolded, but that's not, and it's sort of just lost in a lot of text.
Okay.
And I think if they could bold that so people see it, that, again, would be helpful at trying to keep people off of not parking on Route 58. So if you could just mention that to them.
certainly will.
Thank you. Yeah, questions for Ms. Ewens?
Yes, Chief, I was just wondering who is paying for the out-of-town police officers that you may need to use?
The fair will as well.
Okay.
The fair pays up for all the detail officers.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Mr. Ryan?
A couple. So when you do switch to the alternate parking, will there be signs for people getting off the highway or, on both sides to tell them that they need to use the alternate parking?
So, we won't have signs back at 495 because that's in Wareham, but we're going to get 2 extra signboards so that we can put 2 along the way so we can change the signboards, letting people know that there's a alternate parking. There'll be signs at the entrance to the regular parking lots, tell them to continue on, and then we'll get some signage along the way to be able to guide them there. Because I think that was a big part of the problem, is that without the proper signage, you're really stopping and talking to every single person and telling them what to do, and that won't be successful.
And then my second question is, will there be designated spaces at Carver Square so that you don't impact anything that's going on, businesses or things like that? Is there going to be a section set aside so that other use can also happen in parallel?
That is my understanding. They made a deal with the church in the parking lot, so I'm not, I can't tell you exactly which ones. I know they told me they're going to be using, but how they're going to keep people in there, that's a question I don't have an answer to, because it's kind of beyond my scope. I'm not going to go in and direct people out of it, but they're supposed to use only the parking area from kind of the middle over towards the church, and leave the parking area for the businesses the way it is. I don't honestly know if how well that's going to work or not, but I think that's something we're going to have to deal with as it comes up. But that's the plan right now, and we'll see if that works.
Okay.
When folks are directed to satellite parking, are they going to be directed to one parking lot or the other, or are they going to be giving a choice of where they go?
No, we're going to start with the Carver Square first, and then move to the school after that. That way we can continue and make a loop with the buses. And there will be somebody there, Mr. Ryan, I'm sorry to go back to your question, but there will be somebody there from the fair to deal with that. It won't be a police officer keeping the people in the parking spaces, but they'll have representatives from the fair there, and they'll have to talk to their customers and make sure they stay in the right areas.
In the right areas, because I know there's a 5 o'clock mass there on Saturday, so I don't know how they're going to impact all that. That's what I'm thinking.
I'm sure that's something we're going to have to work through as well if we need those parking areas. So.
Okay.
But they're going to, there are some responsibilities that the fair has to handle for themselves, and a parking lot is not one that we would have police officers deal with, but they would have fair personnel.
Okay.
Anyone else? Mr. Carter?
And you probably don't know the answer to this, Chief, but I'll throw it out there anyways, is, last year, I think some of the lines, from what I heard from people, were long lines inside King Richard's Fair, and that's partly a result of, I'm assuming, I don't know, was just being fully staffed. Have you got an idea from these guys that they're fully staffed for this particular season?
I don't have an answer
If
on
you
that
haven't,
yet.
that's fine.
We're actually meeting with them. We have a group meeting next, the 25th, the kickoff meeting between our offices, the DPW workers, the fair, fire department, EMS. And I hope to, by that time, have a good answer on that as far as their parking lot staff. They start ramping up in July, but I think they continue right through the fair trying to hire people because they've always seemed to have a difficult time hiring people. So I don't have an answer right now as if they are or not, but I believe that, that's their intention to, whether they can get enough people or not, I don't know. But I think the long lines too inside the fair had to do a lot with selling too many tickets as well. And I think
True.
that they're recognizing that as you need to keep your customers happy, and if they're just standing in line waiting to buy food or beverages, then they're probably not happy. So I think having the appropriate number in the fair is beneficial to both the fair and the town, because people can get in there and get their food and get their beverages and enjoy the day instead of standing in line waiting to do that.
Got it. And I did see something on Facebook where they're still looking for an EMT and first responder. Wasn't that something that we talked about in a prior meeting that was supposed to be in place?
It is, and as of today, it is. They did advertise this weekend. Like Ryan's here, Chief Ryan's here, if he would like to speak to it, but I'm aware that they did hire somebody today. I think they had some issues with the people they had hired last minute, and they re-advertised it.
Chief Ryan, is that something you'd like to speak to, or? Wait, actually, there's another right over there, so. Whichever microphone you prefer.
You can have your own mic, Mike.
Good evening, yes. So I spoke with AMA on Monday because I too saw the Facebook post and had a lot of people share the Facebook post with me. And I reached out to AMA on Monday. She did state that they had 2 individuals originally that were going to be filling that role. And unfortunately, due to circumstances in both their situations, those 2 employees were unable to meet the needs. So they did post it, and on Tuesday she had interviews with 4 different people. And as the Chief said, she was able to whittle it down to at least 1 person that they hired to fill that medical role. So that should be all set as of the beginning of the fair. And as we do every year, I'll make sure that I touch base with whoever the medical person is there, just to make sure they know what we do for them, and ask if there's anything we can do to help them in providing the services to the patrons that come in and out of the fair.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
If I could just add one more thing, if you don't mind. So in addition to the traffic plan that we worked on this year, which was a great accomplishment, I thank everybody for their participation in it. We encouraged the fair to work on an all-hazard plan for the fair, for a tornado or an active shooter or a fire, and they were very willing to, and worked with us and have developed quite a plan. It's not a plan that we're going to make public, it's for obvious reasons, but there is a good plan in place with additional signage and different exits from the fair that we can now all know where they are. So I feel that the accomplishments over this past year were quite significant, and because everybody worked together, I think they're going to make great improvements to that. I hope we never need the plan. I hope that we've never have to activate those plans, but having that in place makes me, as your police chief, feel a lot better than we have in the past.
Yeah. I think it's apparent that after what happened last year, if a good thing could come out of that, what the good thing was that it really brought everyone to the table, and there really was a lot of cooperation, I think, in trying to find solutions to the problems that were out there. And I think that can only be a positive for the town. Again, we'll have to wait till the fair opens and see how everything works, but I think we've all done the best we can. And
Well, I know a lot of hard work went into it, and I know we're going to have to wait until we see cars on the road and people in the fair before we really see if it's working or not. But I think we have a good understanding that if things don't work out as well as we expect them, that we have to work together to resolve those as soon as possible. We can't just wait. But I know that we have plans in place now, much better plans, that if that does happen immediately. There's, if if we're switching over to the alternate parking lots, there's going to be a few moments of it, it's going to be tight. We're going to move things around. We only have really a 2-lane road. We divide into 3 lanes. So there's going to be some inconvenience, but I think we're going to get through it in a lot more expeditious manner than we have in the past because we have a plan in place.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah.
Mr. Connor?
And this maybe is just a little more too detailed, but I'm trying to get the separation of your role, the police department's role, coordinating, controlling traffic versus the parking at the park. So it's the King Richard's Fair people that are parking the cars, and they'll tell you, hey, this parking lot's full, it needs to be closed, or the outside parking lot's full, it needs to be closed. Is that kind of the way it works?
Yes, they have their own staff in the parking lot. We only get the cars off the road into the driveway, and then they deal with them from there.
Okay,
They keep an eye on where they're at for parking, and when they think they need. We've done I would hope we've done a good job in increasing the number and the type of radios that they use so that we can have better communication with them, because was a glitch last year that
Yeah,
we
that's what I'm
definitely
thinking.
get
People
through.
leave and you have extra space, but if it's closed, then they're parking.
Right,
in other
and
places.
so we've got to work on that so that we
Gotcha,
can do it.
gotcha.
And we've done that pretty well, although it gets difficult when all right, I got 20 more spaces in here, but we already opened the alternate parking lot. It's difficult to go back and forth with that. So we've got to make a decision that's a timely and well-planned decision, because once you switch, it's a lot to switch back,
Sure.
especially if it's just for 20 or 30 cars. So it is an important feature. They are responsible for the parking inside the parking lot. I think they do a decent job. I think we made some corrections to their plan last year and how they do it. I would say that they probably weren't happy with me and how I made those changes, but we got them enacted, and they worked very well. I don't think there was a belief at first they were going to, but they did. Bringing in 2 lanes at the same time and filling 2 parking lots gets cars off 58 a lot quicker, and they can do it. They have the people to do it, and it worked. So I think while it's not our job to do that, we did make some suggestions, and they went with them, and I think it helped out quite a bit. But you're right, the decision to close a parking lot, or that a parking lot's full, is made by the fair staff, not by the
Okay.
police.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anyone? All right. As we've always done, every time we've had one of these King Richard's Fair updates, we've always given residents a chance to ask questions after the chief made his presentation. So after they've had a chance to hear the information, do we have any residents that would like to
I can
come?
answer your question. Do I understand?
Ma'am, if you could just come up to the microphone.
Dated tickets are being sold? Okay, TV.
If you could just introduce yourself for the folks at home, please. That's all right.
It's such a small group, I was being informed. Sharon Churchill, 41 South Main Street.
Thank you, Ms. Churchill.
Are they only selling dated tickets?
So online, they are selling dated tickets with a cap for each day. They are keeping a small amount available because this is a new system too for them, and some people are used to coming to the fair just show up with cash. So they're keeping a small amount, but that number is figured into the cap for the day. So yes, most of the tickets will be dated and a certain number per day. And then if they have to cancel that day for weather or for whatever reason, then those people can go back online and try to get into a different day.
And is there a mechanism in place to monitor the cap? Do we know how many they're selling?
So we do not know. That's one of the things that, being a private business, they're not interested in sharing with us right now. But we've encouraged them through our discussions as to why it is their responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. And they're assuring us that they have a number. That last year when we switched things around and we made them cap the number there in that last weekend, that it worked. We're being told that they have, and right now we have to go on faith that they are, and if that doesn't happen, we're going to have to adjust that. But at the moment, no, we don't. I don't know the number. The select board doesn't know the number. We have asked, but they've chosen not to give it to us.
And have they answered how many cars they can park in their parking lots?
So nobody's answered that. We've counted the cars.
I know
based
you
on-
did. You counted it from the
We know what can
maps.
fit in there. And again, without knowing the number of tickets that they're going to sell,
Yeah.
it doesn't help me right now.
Yeah.
But I believe that our continued working relationship with them will adjust for that this year, and I think that by the end of the year we'll have a pretty good idea of what that number is, and a pretty good idea of how to work together to adjust the needs, whether it's police officers or cones or alternate parking lots based on those numbers. I think that the one thing that they clearly understand is that when they cause that type of a problem in 58, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth of everybody in town, and it's not conducive to them continuing to operate their business the way they do. So some of the stuff we're going on faith. We don't have any legal ability to force them to tell us, but we're also trying to
It
encourage
isn't
them
a
to.
public safety issue that you know how many people are in the fair at one time?
It's not an enclosed facility, so it's not a facility that the fire department can determine a capacity like this building is. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, no, there's not a legal mechanism to do that right now. But we're working on a cooperative method that shows them that if we all work together, we can make this work and keep 58 open and keep people safe. And we're doing that because, again, we don't have a legal method to make them do that. We certainly, they don't have to get their permits, but we're trying to not do that, trying to balance an existing business with the needs of the community.
Okay, Chief, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Churchill. Is there anyone else? All right. Chief, thank you, as always.
Thank you
Appreciate
again.
it.
Have a great night, everyone.
And again,
Thanks.
if you could just pass on our thanks to everyone at the fair and everyone that was part of the working group that worked together to find these solutions, we appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I will.
Thanks.
Have a good night, everyone.
You as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda is to ratify the police union contract regarding field training officers.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve and sign the side letter of agreement between the Town of Carver and the Carver Police Union and EPBA Local 9 regarding field training officer program.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. And our next item, to ratify the Operation and Maintenance Director David Siedentoft's employment contract. We will be having further discussions later in the meeting in executive session, so for now, we are going to postpone that item. So we will skip to our 6:45 item, discussion and possible vote on emergency medical services rate schedule increase. And Chief Ryan, if you could come back up and join us, please. Thank you for being here tonight.
My pleasure. Good evening. Let me get my notes out. Just to kind of give like a little thing I wrote up here to kind of describe what we're looking to do with these, the ambulance rates. So as you know, the ambulance is primarily funded, actually 100% funded through receipts from service that provided. We are able to run our department that way based off our staffing model. But the best thing about the ambulance fund is that we use that from receipts received from transporting patients. And what we're starting to see over the year is that our revenue coming in is equal to, if not a little bit more, than what we're expending every year, because the cost to provide services is going up, whether it be through equipment, through our call volume. The more busy you are, the more calls we go on, the more money we have to spend on equipment, especially disposable equipment. But also it's coming up to salaries as well. We are currently looking to continue increasing our hourly rate to stay competitive. We hire all part-time staff. We have only full-time staff members is myself and the deputy chief, and everyone else is part-time per diem. And we come into a little bit of competitiveness with private ambulance services, and the reason being is they, can raise their hourly rates as high as they can so long as they have financial support, whether it be a hospital-based system or a private ambulance system that has people who are paying into it to help run the business. We don't have that. So we have to kind of stay aggressive with our billing rates and how much we're bringing in. Our biggest issue is that our billing rates right now are probably right in the middle with everybody in the area, and comparative to the county-wide fire departments and EMS departments, we're right in the middle of everybody. But we are the only self-sufficient EMS agency in the county and the state. So in order for us to maintain that, we need to make sure that we maintain the ambulance fund and making sure that we are billing at the highest rate we can to collect, I should say, because we can bill as high as we want, but we may not be able to collect on everything depending on how high we go. So we definitely need to make sure we're billing appropriately so that happens. Our other kind of issue is that we have 82% of our billable transports are under social health care, whether it be Medicaid or Medicare. And currently, Medicare, the Medicare rates that are set by the government are a lot less than what it actually takes to run our service. So just for comparison, in FY '23, we billed 65% of our transports were Medicare. And from what we billed them, we collected 24% of what we billed them. And it's not because we're not getting the money from Medicare, it's because of their rates. Their rates are so low. And that's something that we can't control. We can't charge more. We can't balance bill patients that are on Medicare. If you're on Medicare, they pay us, you pay a small copay, and that's it. So if we bill $2,000 and Medicare pays $500, we eat the $1,500. So on every call. And same thing goes to 17% of our calls went to Medicaid, and they're even less. So we bill them out, and they give us about 14% of what we bill. So unfortunately, it means that who has to make up that difference? Commercial insurance. So that's when we increase our rates, because that goes on to the commercial insurance, your Blue Cross Blue Shield, your Harvard Pilgrim, your Tufts. And that is what is done across the industry. And that's something that has been going on for a long time. So that's why we're looking to increase our rates again. We increased our rates 2 years ago. Again, the cost of running our service has gone up in those 2 years. And in order to maintain the health of the ambulance fund, it is recommended we raise them again. We work very closely with our billing company. This past year, across the state, a lot of the services have been meeting to discuss billing rates because there are currently 2 bills, one in the state Senate, one in the state House, that will require commercial insurance companies to pay 100% of whatever the municipal rate is being charged by the EMS agency. So whatever we decide to set as a rate, they will have to pay that in full. The only thing they can minus off that, take away from that, is a deductible or copay that the patient agrees to. So they can't push it all, they can't just pay a certain amount and then push it on to the patient to pay the rest. But that is something that's going on across state. There's other states that already have those laws in place. Massachusetts, of course, we're still working on getting that in place. So hopefully that will help, and that will definitely help. And then the more these states, the more that states put these in place, the more that these big insurance companies are going to push back on the politicians to increase Medicare and Medicaid rates. Because that's, in essence, what has to happen. Medicare and Medicaid rates have to come up. And we give reports every year, every 3 years, every 5 years, cost reporting. We just did that this past year with Medicaid, told them how much it costs for us to run our service, and they gave us a little bit of money to kind of help offset the difference, but it's not nearly enough as to what it would cost to run. The sad part is that if we really did, if we were able to collect on all the Medicaid, Medicare, and insurance, if we were able to collect on all that, we'd probably bring in an extra $1.7 million a year. But that's why our rates are so high. Our rates are so high, or higher. I don't say so high, but the rates are where they're at now because we're not getting that money from Medicare and Medicaid. So we lose about that much money every year that we bill to them, and they have their set rate that we have to bill at.
Okay. Questions from the board? Mr. Ryan?
Sure. So as our costs go up each year and the rate, and you have to increase the rate, then the gap just keeps increasing between what you can actually get reimbursed. So at some point, you're probably going to run into impact in the ability for us to continue to be self-sufficient. Do you have a feel on?
My biggest concern regarding that is that there's always been that discussion about Medicare for all, and going with Medicare for all health insurance. And if that's the case, then that would definitely cripple not only us but every ambulance service in the country. But of course the state and of course us. But we're hoping that the more we increase these rates, the more we'll see the pressure will be that the Medicare and Medicaid rates will come up. So that is something that's definitely in discussion right now. And Medicare is doing their cost reporting. They collect it every 3 to 5 years, but they do it federally, so it's across the country. So it takes so long. Like we're scheduled to start doing our reporting to them after the first of the year, and we're in the last year. They do it over a 3-year period, and we're in the last year. We just luckily got selected to do it the last year, so we'd have to do it earlier. But the hope is that by increasing these rates, that we will be able to bring enough money in so that we still can remain self-sufficient. for years to come. And, there's other things that, we're doing in the EMS side to kind of, maybe cover some capital expenses through ARPA funds, things of that nature, so that we don't have to use the ambulance fund for certain capital expenses, like the cardiac monitors we just got. That comes off our capital plan now and got covered by ARPA funds. So that works out there. And we have some other ideas that we're working on to see if we can help with that too.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? Mr. Carter?
Yeah, when you're talking about Medicare, Medicaid, if you billed $100, you got 14%, so you got $14 with that, right, on a bill back. But when you were billing out insurance companies, are they paying 100% of what you're currently billing?
So they're not, the insurance company's not paying 100%. They're paying a big amount of it, and but they're pushing, but we're allowed to bill them all that. So we bill them, and then they send back the payment minus whatever deductible copay is owed by the patient, per their agreement with their provider.
Okay, but if this bill goes through, they'll be paying 100% of what you bill them. Is that what you said?
So
Pending bill?
So we're billing the private insurance 100% of the cost. We don't have a set rate with them. So we bill them our rate, and then they will respond back and pay us what they owe, the bill minus whatever the patient owes for whatever deductible, whatever. And then the patient will then, then the patient is responsible for that copay or deductible. If it's a $500 deductible, whatever, they're responsible.
Okay, but I'm just confused then. What does the municipal rate law do?
So the municipal rate law is that, but there are some insurance companies that will pay less and put more on the patient.
Got it.
And above and beyond what a copay or deductible is. They'll pay what they believe is an established rate, and then sometimes they'll try to negotiate. That it is one health insurance company that is famous for reaching out saying, "Oh, well, we paid this much. Can you forget the last 600?" And it's like, no, we can't. That's not the way this works. So we do it for you. We have to do it for everyone. So it's like, no, everyone gets held to the same expectation and the same standard.
So when you say that increasing the rates on the commercial to get the balance in place so we can be more self-sufficient, is it when you say that it's commercial insurance, meaning if we increase what we bill them, then they'll probably increase what they charge customers, and those aren't just commercial customers, right? We're talking about businesses.
Right. Yeah. So unfortunately, it's anybody who has
anybody who has any kind of insurance.
Right. Blue Cross, Tufts,
Yep.
Fallon, Harvard Pilgrim, all those commercial providers.
Got it. Thank you.
I think it might be helpful, before we continue our discussion, if I just read for the folks at home what the current rates and the proposed rates are. So let's see, we have the BLS emergency base rate. The current rate is $1406.38, and the new proposed rate is $1619. The BLS non-emergency base rate, the current rate is $1406.38, the new proposed rate is $1619. The ALS non-emergency base rate, the current rate is $2273.19, and the proposed rate is $2419. The ALS-1 emergency base rate is $2273.9. The current rate is $2273.19, and the proposed rate is $2419. And the ALS-2 emergency base rate, the current rate is $3437.14, and the proposed rate is $3557. And the mileage, the current rate is $37.31, and the proposed rate is $38. Chief, could you just quickly explain what the difference in those are, the BLS and the ALS? Could you just?
Oh, definitely. First, I might have, my handwriting might not be easy to read, but that 3,550 should be 51, not 57. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
sorry. So that's a.
I don't have good handwriting when it comes to ones. next to numbers.
ALS-2 emergency base rate, right?
Yeah, so
the current rate is $3437.14, and the proposed rate should be $3551?
correct.
Thank you.
Yep. They have our billing company uses a non-emergency rate because they have private ambulance companies and others that they work with. And we occasionally have calls where we show up and it's not an emergency, so we take the patient to the hospital, but not with the lights and sirens on. So for the first two, the BLS stands for basic life support, which is an EMT in the back with you. The EMT will check your vital signs, sometimes provide a little bit of oxygen if needed, bandage your wound. These are more for your trip and falls, psych patients, need mental health evaluations who are calm and cooperative and don't need, restraints or medications. So it's really, those are those calls. And then if the ALS rates, again, They have an ALS non-emergency. We never bill that because normally our ALS calls are emergency, so we bill them as an emergency rate. But ALS 1 and ALS 2 is advanced life support, which involves paramedic in the back, normally with cardiac monitoring. And the difference between a 1 and a 2 is based off the amount of care being given. So an ALS 1 transport is someone who's heart monitor, maybe gets an IV, one medication, and an ALS 2 patient is someone who gets, cardiac monitor, maybe a defibrillation using the machine or a pacing. It may get a couple of IVs, couple medications, some more advanced treatment that's needed as well. More advanced skills like an advanced airway needs to be placed. That brings up to an ALS 2 level. And normally with us on an ALS 2 call, we have 2 paramedics on the truck, which means we also are paying for an additional paramedic on unit. And again, more equipment's being used and more disposable equipment is being used. The more expensive disposable equipment, I should say.
Okay, and I guess I'll just read an example for the folks at home so they have an understanding of what you're talking about when you say Medicare only pays a portion of that. I'll just use the ALS 2 emergency base rate. So the Medicare fee allowed is $749.24, but the current rate is $3,437.14. So that's quite a difference.
Yeah, and an ALS level 2 call would cost us more than that to run. So it could with the equipment we're using. I mean, some of the medications we're giving are $250 a piece. Okay. So I mean, we could quickly in an ALS 2 level call be treating a patient and it could be costing the service over $1,500. Okay. So it's just one of the things we're trying to make up to, and it's one of the things with the cost reporting we're trying to show to Medicare and Medicaid that the numbers need to come up. Their numbers used to be better than what we were we used to charge the Medicare rate because that was the best rate out there, but they haven't kept up with the inflation and the cost of services and everything throughout the years.
Okay, thank you. Are there more questions from the board? Anyone? Okay, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the emergency medical services rate schedule increase.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
All right. Next is an update from Town Planner Thomas Bott on priority development areas and priority protection areas. Mr. Bott, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Wish me luck with my tech. I'm Tom Bott, I'm the town planner here in Carver, Mass, and wanted to talk to you about our latest project with our partners at Serpent. That's not my password. Right. So in 2017, the town of Carver, working with Serpent, put together areas of priority development areas and priority protection areas. We are looking at updating that information, and as part of that, Serpent has asked some folks with some local knowledge to sit with a group and go over about 4 hours worth of maps and data and look at that and sort of fact check that. So to talk a little bit about what the actual priority development areas are, Serpent put together a video that I'm going to try to play for you that talks about some of this stuff. Let's see how we do. I'm going to leave the sound off for the ad because I don't know what that is, but I don't think I want to buy it. And I don't think, we should be inducing the folks in Carver to do so either. Amazing. Sorry about that.
playing the sound through the monitor or through,
We'll just try this one.
maybe the volume?
Across
There you
southeastern
go.
Massachusetts will update their priority development areas and priority protection areas for the first time in 10 years. Why now? The last update was in 2013, and a lot has changed. New developments, new policies, and new priorities. We want to capture all of that. Additionally, we want to be sure our region is prepared for the future South Coast rail service and all the exciting opportunities that come with it. What are these PDAs and PPAs, and why are they important? Priority development areas, or PDAs, are areas where you want to grow. They usually have appropriate zoning, good infrastructure, and local support. Examples might include a local downtown area, or an important job center. Priority protection areas, or PPAs, are areas that should be protected from development because they play important ecological, cultural, or open space roles in your community. Examples might include an ecologically sensitive habitat, agricultural land, or drinking water resources. This straightforward mapping activity will take place in each community over the next few months. It's important to note that you will have lots of opportunities to participate and comment on the work. It's also important to note that this isn't zoning, but sometimes communities realize they want to change their zoning, and it's not an investment plan. But often investments, developments, or land acquisitions happen as a result of the designation. We'll provide examples of those real-world changes in the next video, Priority Area Success Stories.
Well, thank you, and thank you to the folks from Serpide for putting that together for us. So essentially, we have identified priority development areas previously in 2007, 2008, and now 2013. And so now it's the time for the latest update. And I've asked for representatives from the Planning Board, the RDA, Conservation Commission, and the Select Board to participate in this. We'll have public meetings later on in the fall, but this first venture with the folks from this group that I'm assembling is simply to review the data and understand what's available out there, and then we'll have some public meetings later in the fall. So with that, my ask is, and I'm happy to take any questions if there's two folks on the Select Board who are interested in participating in this.
Are there questions from the board?
I'm definitely interested in participating, for the record.
Are you looking for two representatives?
Yes,
One representative?
two.
Anyone else? Mr. Ryan?
I'm interested too,
All right.
if nobody else wants it. I mean,
All right, there you go.
Well, I know that every board, every committee has liaisons and has all these sort of branches that you participate in. So I appreciate the fact that you folks are putting yourselves out there for one other cog in trying to make Carver into the place we all want it to be.
We always appreciate all your updates, Mr. Bott.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Is there anything
Thank you.
else? Any other questions from the board?
Nope.
Good?
Okay,
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bott.
Thank you.
All right, I see Mr. Palmieri from the North Carver Water District here in our audience. He is here to update us on something, a few items down in our agenda, but I think if there are no objections, we could let Mr. Palmieri come up now? All right? All right. Mr. Palmieri, thank you for joining us this evening. And a little background for the board. So as you know, we have a number of ARPA projects under consideration. This board put together a while back a working group to review these ARPA projects and bring them to the board. There will be a number of projects coming to the board in either late September or early October, depending on when everything is ready. But I think after consultations with Mr. Palmieri and Mr. Fennessy, we felt that this one project, because it really is just a bill that we owe the town of Middleborough, they were good enough to help us out when we had an issue, and I think it probably is incumbent upon us to try to act on this one as quickly as possible. So thank you, Mr. Palmieri, for coming in this evening.
You're welcome.
And
Thanks for having me.
if you could just give us a little background on how we got this bill.
As we all know, back in June of 2022, the water plant for the North Carver Water District failed, and graciously, the town of Middleborough stepped up and agreed to sell us water. And I make that point, to sell us water, not give us water. They sold us water for almost a year. It was 11 months. We rounded up the dates, instead of parsing a day or two or a week here or there. It was at the end of, I think, the budgeting season, when three entities got together, the town of Carver, represented by Mr. Fennessy, the North Carver Water District is the chairperson, myself, and representatives of the town of Middleborough, to figure out what the amount of water used was, and then what the ultimate cost for that water would be. At the beginning of all this, the water rate established, which I was not aware of, I didn't ask either, to be honest, was 1.5 times the rate for the customers of Middleborough. It sounds like an awful lot, but because our rate is so much higher per unit cost than any town around us, it actually ended up being about, I think it was 0.13% higher than what we bill out. In talking to Mr. Fennessy yesterday, I know one of the questions that a member or members of the select board had was thinking that we were not charging the ratepayers of Carver for the cost of water. They were billed through this whole thing. So no one got free water. They still had a water bill to pay. But with the revenue generated from billing water customers, we still had all our bills to pay. Small water, taxes, an increase from years past of insuring the plant, insuring the facility. We also had to pay, if we remember, we borrowed ARPA funds. They weren't granted us. We didn't apply as the district to repay the town, I believe it was $236,000 for the replacement of the membranes. Then we had other costs while the plant was down. We mucked tanks, which is cleaned out some tanks internally. What else we do? During testing, we found that one of the blower motors that runs cooling air for all the other equipment was defective, so we had to replace that. We took the opportunity to replace a well pump that was due for replacement. When we did that, we found that the wet end, which is the filtering system prior to the pump down in the well pit, that was defective. So we had a lot of additional costs, because our feeling at the board was, and again, talking with Mr. Fennessy and other people in town governance, was that while that plant was down, to do other maintenance projects that we could do. It didn't cover everything, because you can't anticipate everything. So we did a lot of preventative maintenance and other things. So we billed our customers, but we had a huge amount of money that we had to pay based on that. And that's why we applied for ARPA funds to pay back the town of Middleborough this money owed, because it wasn't anything that could have been foreseen or budgeted for until you had that final number, which again was at the end of one fiscal year, the beginning of the other. So that process already started about monies for the year.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any other questions.
Are there questions from the board? Mr.
Yeah,
Rock?
I'm a little confused. So Carver residents were billed
That is
during the
correct.
whole period.
That is correct.
And at a less of a rate that they typically would have been charged by Carver, you said there was a little bit of a difference.
No, sir, they were charged at the Carver rate.
Okay.
So
But I think what you were saying is that Middleborough's rate, Carver's rate was a little bit higher, but Middleborough charges a little bit less of a rate, and the residents were charged. So I'm trying to add up where the money we owe to Middleborough is coming from, because if we were already billing our residents at the proper rate and they were paying for the water for the 11 months plus, then where's the difference of the $156,000 coming from?
because we generate our own water. We have our own wells. So we had to, it would be like this, I guess. I'm going to use an analogy. If you have town water, or if you have your private well, there's a cost to that. If you choose to buy Perrier or some other bottled water, that's an additional cost. We still had almost the same costs to just own the plant. So the additional cost of buying water was over and above what we normally spend annually, because we had to buy that water now as opposed to produce it.
Okay.
So the cost that you, when the Carver residents pay their bill, pays for your equipment, your staff, your insurance, your taxes, any repairs that need to be made.
That's correct.
But what they pay you does not pay for the Middleborough water.
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's over and above. So our budget was about, and I'm guessing, because I don't have last year's budget, I got this year's budget, this fiscal year. So our budget, our budget for fiscal year 2022 was almost $500,000. At the end of last fiscal year, we had run out of money. We were able to find some, maybe if you will, from good accounting, whatever. That never took into account buying water from Middleborough, because we still had all our bills to pay, our normal bill that we base our annual budget that gets approved at town meeting on. So that was an expense over and above, because we're now buying water.
So maybe to summarize, we billed Carver residents for the water, but we did not pay Middleborough with that money. We paid ourselves
Paid our expenses.
for our expenses, for our water system, but with the money that were billed over the 11 months, but did not pay Middleborough for the water. And so now we're getting the bill from Middleborough, and we don't have any money left over from, so the full amount that we billed the Carver residents, all of that was spent?
Yes,
We had
and
nothing-
just like will be spent this
And
year.
we had nothing left over to pay Middleborough for the water?
Not in the annual budget. The way the North Carver Water District is structured, we are an enterprise fund, as everyone knows. I'd invite everyone to get a copy of this and read it. When you actually read this, the North Carver Water District was never intended to be a solvent enterprise. That's why the RDA underwrote most of the bonds to build it, and the town of Carver did. It's right here.
Yeah.
Okay? So this cost was over and above the normal operating cost per year.
And my understanding is that you and Mr. Fennessy, and maybe some other folks too, negotiated that cost down with Middleborough. Wasn't it originally
Yes. so
higher that they were asking for?
Originally, the first number I heard was the first of the two meetings that I was involved in. And they were basing it on consumption. And the town of Middleborough at first believed that the first 6 months would have been basically July 1st to January 1st, was that they sold us, it was just under 10 million gallons of water. We usually only manufacture at our plant about 10 million gallons of water for the whole year. So based on that, we were expecting a bill of well over $200,000. But what we did is, Middleborough had a number, then through our billing department here in Carver, receipts coming in for water billed to the customers, and then using meter accounting that's used for annual reports to DEP. We went back over 5 years, not including the year that we bought water from Middleborough, and we came up with an average. And then from that average was negotiated a water rate. So it was in the $200 and something thousand range down to $156,000.
Actually, 300 something.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah.
That's what I
So
thought, yeah.
it was quite a bit. I mean, so.
And I will say, Ms. Hewen or Mr. Fennessy, correct me if I'm wrong, 'cause I'm just going from memory here, and I know you were both at that ARPA committee meeting, but I believe that this project was recommended unanimously by that.
It was.
Oh, yes, yes. I mean, it's definitely an ARPA.
Yeah.
It's listed as the type of ARPA project that would be approved, yeah.
Thank you.
But, not to take up too much of your valuable time, but was asked a lot of questions yesterday, Mr. Fennessy. I've only been at this a year, I think little over a year. I'm still learning my way, and I'm still, for every question I ask, I have to ask 12 more to get to the answer to the first question I asked. It's been very challenging, trust me. But I did some quick math today. So to give you an example of water rates, and I say this only because the question came up about our customers paying water bills. So the North Carver Water District currently charges for a 5/8 meter hookup $45.90. With that, the customer gets 1,000 gallons of water. By any stretch of the imagination, if one to Google what the average household uses in water daily, the number usually comes up in the 120 gallons a day use. So that means that the customer gets, for a quarterly bill, about 8 days' worth of water. Then after that, they start paying for the quantity they use, okay? There's like number of tiers. So take the town of Middleborough, and this is where this comes in, that 1.5 times their water rate as opposed to ours. In the town of Middleborough, for a 5/8 meter hookup, they pay $44.49. They get 500 cubic feet of water. That's 3,740 gallons. So for a Carver resident to catch up what the Middleborough resident gets, that's going to be an additional $73.45 to get the same quantity of water. Plymouth is similar, it's a little less, but it's the same type of math. So already our water rates are quite a bit higher than anyone around us. Wareham, theirs isn't published, I didn't call them. Plimpton doesn't have a municipal water system other than something like here in the center of town where, there's school and the seat of town governance, town hall, the police and fire station, have a shared well, which makes it a municipal system. So, that just gives you an idea of what the North Carver Water District customer, what they're paying. And not only that, they're getting brown water right now. So it's no bargain.
Right now, they're getting brown water?
Yes, they are, for a number of reasons.
What are the reasons?
Let's see, when they started up the plant, unbeknownst to me, there's two forms of treatment used at our facility. One is those membranes that we all remember from a year ago. The other thing that they do is they chemically treat the water, so they go through a series of analytic machinery, the equipment, and it tells the system how much of the chemicals used in the process to inject into the water, and then it goes through the filtering, the membranes. The analytical company that they were using didn't have a turnaround any faster than 10 to 14 days. You can't, so every time, so we have to wait for the analytic report to come back to adjust the chemicals. So people were complaining for a couple of weeks that they had brown water. When I called Small Water on this, they told me about the lab not getting a quick response. We've since remedied that. Now we're getting a 3 to 4 day turnaround, 5 tops. So every 5 days we're able to adjust. The other problem is there was 2 outages since the startup of the plant. And every time you have an outage, because we don't have a water tank, we don't have a water tower, we don't have enough pressure or volume in our system to self-flush the system. So when you lose your plant, all that water in those tanks, when you then turn the plant back on, it slowly stirs everything up instead of flushing it out. It just creates a discolored water. And when I say just, I don't mean just like, well, it's only that. it's an issue. I am on that water, okay? So I get it myself. So our last outage was a week ago Monday, so yeah, a week ago yesterday. There was an issue with the water system, and it was an unforeseen thing. It's nothing you could plan on, because what happened was the plant thinks it's in normal mode, and it's like the pumps are on standby, where in fact, the pumps had shut off, but there's no alarm tied to the system to tell anybody, the water operator or anyone in governance, that you got an issue. So by the time it was found out, and the water company came down to assess what was going on, the plant had shut down. And that created more turbulence when the pumps kicked back on. So it's like, it's just an ongoing, it's playing whack-a-mole. I mean, you have one small issue, and it creates a huge issue, and it all revolves around there is no water tower. You don't have stored water with the right amount of pressure, with the right amount of volume to flush the system. That's just one of the many, many issues that we deal with.
I think it's important that we get back to the agenda, the item that's actually on our agenda here, which is strictly a payment of a water bill and a discussion about an ARPA request. Are there any more questions from members of the board on the water bill, or how that was generated, or anything like that? Nothing? Mr. Fennessy, do you have anything to add here?
No.
Okay.
Guess not.
I move that we vote to approve the ARPA request of the North Carver Water District Commission for payment of invoice to the town of Middleborough for water purchases of $156,000.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. And just for the board's information, because I don't think everyone here has been involved in ARPA yet, so if the board was to approve this, then what we would do is send an ARPA request to Tom O'Brien at the Plymouth County, and he would review it and see whether it meets the ARPA guidelines. I think we're all pretty, water is one of the prime things that ARPA is there for, so we're pretty confident that they would approve it.
Yep.
And at that point, then the money would come back to Carver. But
And Mr. Chair, I wanted to also note that one of the reasons we're doing this, even if they had the money in their account, they would have to wait to town meeting
That's
to access it.
That's right. I think the town of Middleborough was very gracious. We all remember that meeting where they stepped in to help out. Anyway, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
I know that we can't borrow on it, but I have no idea what the financials are for the North Carver Water District with regards to where it stands right now and money that's in the bank. I think we need to know that before we decide we're going to vote on a bill to see if, if in a future date we get reimbursed from ARPA funds like we did the last project based on the cash that they were able to generate from operations. But before I go into that, I guess my question goes that we knew this was coming, right? Because if what I'm hearing is, when did we go over to Middleborough Water?
June, well, the date we used was July 1st. July 1st
of
2022.
of 2022.
Yeah.
So we knew we had to pay for it, and as you said, since we were buying our water, we don't have enough money for our expenses. So we knew that there had to be a bill coming for this. So my question is, number one, why wouldn't we include it in the 23 year-end fiscal closeout, or at least putting in the 2024 budget as a bill that we have to pay?
Because it would have to come out of their money that's not transmittable or transferable until a town meeting authorizes it. So even at the end of the year, there's no mechanism to say, oh, okay, let's take out this money out of their fund to pay for it. So they have a bank account, with money in it. I think there's about 600,000 right now.
Yes, I tried to get that information today, but the folks that I could have got it from weren't in.
So we have $600,000 in your account right now.
Yes.
Which they need to pay their bills, after which they won't have anything.
Well, if you have $600,000 in your account right now, you're going to bill going forward for water to the residents. So your annual budget, I don't think is
My annual budget this year is $540.
So you have enough money to pay your bills with $600,000.
But, Mr. Fennessy, correct me if I'm wrong, they cannot take that money out of that account without an active town
We
meeting,
would have
right?
to wait till town meeting,
So why didn't we do it at last town meeting?
because it wasn't finished yet.
So we knew it was coming.
So when the budget was approved by the town meeting in April, this was still going on, the
Yeah.
installation of the.
You can't just
We didn't know when it was gonna
appropriate,
end.
you know, a blank amount of money.
Well, you could have asked Middleborough what they were using and did some kind of calculation.
So
on
they
that
didn't
reserve.
know, because there was no meter pit. And that's another issue that has to be addressed, so that we know when they turn on that spigot, how much water is coming into Carver, so that we know and they know, because they want to know how much they're shipping out.
So it's all
Right now,
estimated.
and that's how we got into a negotiation on the bill, is that because there's no specific identification of how much comes in, how much they're buying. I mean, we use more this year than normal because we were flushing lines constantly. You know, and you mentioned that it's about 10 million gallons a year.
Correct.
But we billed out at 12 million because the constant work that was being done down there, every time they did some work, they would have to constantly flush out the lines for a period of
Yeah,
time.
and I think it's important to all remember, this was an emergency situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we had our meeting to discuss this with the North Carver Water District, I believe you were the only person on the North Carver Water District at the time, and those chairs out there were all full with concerned residents. We told them, just do what you have to do to get clean water, because I think that's something we all felt that they needed. And
Priority.
I remember instructions being given to them to, you know, if you have to run your bathtubs to clear that line, run your bathtub to clear the line. I mean, do what you have to do to get clean water. And you know, that resulted in a bill. It's high, but it was an emergency
No,
situation.
my
And-
question isn't what was done, you know, because we had to get it resolved as quickly as possible, get the residents on it. My question has more to do with the source of funding than anything else. Should this have been something we had planned for during the process to have funds available?
May I
for
speak
this?
as a citizen, not as the North Carver Water District Commissioner and the chairperson? I am a customer.
Sure.
And I'm a resident of Carver. ARPA funds are federal monies. The North Carver Water District, the people that are tied into that system, they are as entitled to any other citizen to relief, okay? As a citizen of this town. The town as a whole, yeah, we might have done a better job in planning on that, but we had other things to plan on. This is a $300 a year job, okay? And it's an absolute travesty, this whole system, the North Carver Water District, okay? Now, to answer your question, Mr. Cotter, about the monies, when this year is over, I will be going to town meeting to ask for most of that money to be spent on engineering to take this system to the next level, because there is no darn choice, whether it be installing pumping stations to boost the pressure or engineering to put in a water tower somewhere, because this has been going on for 12-plus years, waiting for a private company to come in and build a water tower, and it is not going to happen. So you've got 135 rate-paying customers right now, okay, that have no choice but to be on this awful system. And not one penny's been spent to improve the system, okay? As I said, I've been here 1 year, and in 1 year, I've learned that much. And I apologize if we weren't quick enough on the ball to just put the money aside. But every money we've got banked is going to be spent on something else. This is not a money-making enterprise, contrary to what a lot of people in town think. It is no better than your private well as far as the quality of the water. It's actually worse. My wife would love to have our well back. We had no choice. Most of the people that are tied into this darn system are on it because of contaminated private wells due to 2 landfills in North Carver, okay? It is not a bonus being on this system. And these folks are entitled to relief through ARPA funds. And I'm going to rest at that.
Okay. I agree with this gentleman from the standpoint of, and this is something Dana brought up a while ago, is to use opera funds to say, hey, what do we do with the North Carver Water District? Do we do what this gentleman said, say, let's invest and find out what we're going to do with it, improve it, or whatnot? How do we use opera funds to pay for buying water because we don't have enough expenses to pay, we don't have the money to pay our own expenses for the North Carver Water District? How does that fall into ARPA? It's not an infrastructure investment.
Because it was clean water being serviced to the community,
While we had contaminated systems.
contaminated issues.
And again,
And it's one of the big, and I think you mentioned it, Chair, one of the big issues that ARPA was set up for is one of the 4 big buckets was anything to do with water and water purity. So that because of the whole issue with COVID and not knowing how it transmitted, and they were even doing testing of water to see what was in the waters that came out of the sewers, to see how much COVID and so forth. So they generally rubber stamp approve these things. And this is something that we'll send to them, and I feel very confident that they'll approve it.
but again, this is, as with all ARPA projects, we don't have the right to just go forward with the project. We approve the project here, and
then
then
it
it gets
goes to
sent
the
to Plymouth County, and they approve or disapprove. And if were they to disapprove, well, then we'd have to come back and do something else to pay the bill. But I think after reviewing their guidelines for ARPA, I feel pretty confident it would be approved, but I mean, it's not up to us, it's up to Plymouth County. I'm sorry, Mr. Ryan.
And we have to pay the bill.
Yes, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, we need to pay our good neighbor as soon as possible. I think the quickest way is probably to go through the ARPA. I know we have more to look at, and we should definitely plan on addressing the whole issue, continue to do that, but in the short term, you know, if this is a mechanism to pay back, this may not be the last time we need Middleborough to help us out, so we may as well pay them expedient. And
that's why we have
move
it on the
forward.
agenda this evening, and it's not waiting with the other ARPA projects. Any other questions or thoughts before we go forward with a vote? Anything?
No.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
for your
Mr.
time.
Palmieri. We appreciate your time.
Yep, thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mike.
All right. At this point, we are going to go back to our 710 item, appointment of a Select Board representative to the Carver, Marion, Wareham Regional Refuse District. This came up because we had a number of residents resign from the district, so it's now, I believe, Mr. Fennessy, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there's 3 Wareham representatives and 1 Carver representative.
Yes.
So Carver isn't very well represented on this board, and I think the thought was if there was a member of the Select Board who was willing to serve on it, even if that was just on a temporary basis until some residents were able to step up, it would just give Carver a little more equal representative on that board. I'm told all the meetings are on Zoom, so I don't believe anyone has to go to Wareham. You can get in remotely. Is there a member of the board who would be willing to serve on this board, even if it was on a temporary basis? Okay.
So let me ask this, just to put my neck out there. Does it have to be a resident of the town?
I don't know.
Because I'm willing to do that if it's not.
Are you saying you would be willing to?
I would, yeah.
To do that? Well, I think we're probably better off making that motion, and if
If it fails, because it's not.
if we find that that's not
Yeah. You can-
appropriate, then we can come back and.
It does
try to
say
do something
Select
else.
Board Representative. It doesn't
No,
say.
that's our language.
Yeah, that's our language, that's not,
So do we know if it's okay?
So I don't know.
We
No, I
don't.
don't know. That's why.
but I think
mean,
we could take a vote, and certainly
Yeah.
if they said, no, it has to be a resident of town, then we,
And it's a
Come back.
temporary, hopefully,
yeah.
situation, but I think it's important that we know what's going on. And
I think it is, and like I said, right now, we can be outvoted on anything, 3-1.
Yeah.
So we do need some, if I wasn't on so many boards now, I'd do it myself, but I just
I
can't
know.
do another one. Okay. Is there a motion to appoint Mr. Fennessy as our representative to the Carver, Marion, Wareham Regional Refuse District?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Wait, you said,
Congratulations, Mr. Fennessy.
and this is temporary, right?
This is temporary,
So
yeah.
and we'll keep looking to see if we can get somebody to step forward.
And again, if you could just put it on your, perhaps to update us at the next meeting as to whether whether we can do that or not.
Figure that out.
Okay. Next is a status update on previously approved ARPA projects. Mr. Fennessy.
So there's a handout here. It gives an outline of all the ARPA projects that were submitted in the first round, and now we went into the second round. The first round, if you look at the cover page, there's some projects that have already been approved and actually installed. The North Carver, obviously the water membranes were one. The refrigerators and freezers at the COA, that's been done. The cardiac monitors purchased for EMS, that's been done. The fire station number 2 HVAC, that's been done. The IT upgrade dispatch, fire station 2 and display boards and computers, and that's been done. If you go to the second page of that first round, where it says, it starts with ARPA fund request round 1, Robert's list. These have all been applied for. The applications are, when it says they're in draft state, it means that they went to the county and they came back with additional questions. So we're working through to answer other questions on these things. I think this is dated for our meeting, the ARPA meeting, so that was on, this document's dated August 1st. Since then, the EMS HVAC installation, the first item on there, is being done as we speak. The EMS security cameras, that's done. You can see where it says contract invoice check, means that we had a reimbursement check. The Fire Station 3, that's also been completed. Fire security systems and Fire 2 and 3, that is waiting on the final check. So that's installed, and they were doing that. I went down there last week to look at it, and they were installing them then when I was down there. Some of these other ones, they're still waiting on, and one of the big ones is here in Town Hall. They're waiting for supplies. It's the old supply chain issue.
Is that all, because that was my question, is that all we're waiting for as far as the
Yeah,
technology? We're just simply waiting for supplies?
Yeah, and the approval of that. So
that hasn't been approved by it?
Well, it's after we do it.
Okay.
It's been submitted, so when we get it, we'll start the project. It's been tacitly approved, I guess is a good word. Codification of bylaws, that's in the town clerk's hands. A lot of that's been done prior, and she's looking into where we need to go for the rest of it. Public safety dispatch, that was one that the chief is still looking to see if there are other options in that, because it's very expensive.
Okay.
So that's still on the list. Now, on the second page,
Well, so I see your second
we'll get
page,
into round
and I think these are some of the things that perhaps could be coming up,
Yes.
but that's not on the agenda. The only
Okay,
thing on
okay.
the agenda is a
So,
status update on
status-
previously
that's the
approved
status of
ARPA
this one,
projects.
And we'll
So,
talk on the 5th.
yes, I think that should be a different agenda item.
Yep. So it's moving along. We're happy with the number of, we haven't been rejected yet on any of them, so
Okay.
that's a good thing. We're happy on the progress that we made so far. Again, it frustrates me, because I would have made this number 1 for us in this room, but, you know.
It does, and of
it'll
course,
get there.
from the town standpoint, there is a deadline on these ARPA projects. So it's important that we stay on top of it
yeah,
to make sure that things get completed by the time they need to get
And
completed by, so we don't
that's-
forfeit the money.
The end of 2024,
Right,
so.
right. And just quickly before I forget, if we could just go back to the previous agenda item quickly, the North Carver Water District. If you could just, when you submit that item to Plymouth County. If you could just let them know the
You know,
nature of that item and try to get them to perhaps
Yeah.
give it as much, move it up on their chain a
Yeah,
little bit so we
okay.
can try to get that accomplished. I think just the good faith that the town of Middleborough showed us, we should show that same good faith in return. Are there questions on these ARPA projects from the board?
Said one question. So we've only received one payment of everything that's been approved, correct?
No, not true. So,
1, 2, 3,
see where,
4,
if you,
5, 6.
on the
Page 2.
second page, where it says on the right side, date payment received.
Yep.
If you see check, we got the check back from the county. So starting with EMS, HVAC, then the white box on the right, says contract invoice check.
Oh, I thought it said needed.
Contract invoice check. Contract, refrigerator contract invoice check. All those have been paid back to us.
So on the application status, it says ARPA application draft state. So,
Yeah, she may not have updated that when she put in the check.
so the only ones that were approved were up in the top in green, correct? Or yellow, whatever that.
Well, this goes back to July,
Okay.
so
Could
approved, yeah.
could you
Approved,
check with
but we
her?
didn't get the check back yet
Okay.
on those green ones.
Okay, so none of these other, below the 5 green ones, none of those have been approved yet?
No, because they've been installed, they have.
We've received
So
the
I think what happened is that, where it was the application status, when she updated this, she
Okay.
probably didn't update the,
She just didn't
Yeah.
update that.
I'm sorry, I thought the
and
contract
she's on
invoice check was
vacation
what was
this week,
needed.
so.
Yeah.
I thought that where it says contract invoice check, that was what's needed by the county commissioners
That
to
was what?
approve. Where it says on the second set in the white,
Mhm.
where it says needed information for submission of application, contract invoice check. I thought that was, I
Yeah,
misread.
where, which one are you looking at?
The very last, yeah,
It's like EMS, HVAC,
Oh, number 5B,
yeah,
yeah,
where, under-
contract invoice check.
where it says right above that, says needed
Maybe-
information for
Okay,
submission.
maybe, again, I don't think it's been updated.
Okay.
could you, when she gets back from vacation, Mr. Fennessy, could you ask her to update this?
Yeah,
And let's put this, let's make this another agenda item for one of the September meetings and have her update this.
Yeah.
'Cause I think
A
this,
little more.
I think this is not quite as updated as it could be.
No.
Are there any other questions here? Mr. Fennessy, could you, I think this would be a good thing to have, maybe a quarterly update for
On
the
the
board
ARPA.
as to where these stand, so we can keep on top of this, especially after we approve more and more of these, because we don't want to forfeit any money by not having things completed on a timely basis, so.
So let me just tell you, after the round one, there was available $1,491,729 after all of round one. In round two, I don't know if you want me to mention it, how much that came to.
I don't think that's on the agenda,
Yeah,
so
all
I'm
right,
trying to
okay.
just really
We'll keep
stick to
that
the
for-
agenda.
We'll keep you in suspense.
I think if a member of the board was interested in that number, they
They
could
let
simply
me know.
email you a question, and you could.
It's on on one of the pages.
Okay. All right. All right. If there's nothing else on that, the next item on our agenda is the town administrator update. We'll stay with you, Mr. Fennessy.
Okay, so I have a few things. So the library HVAC is on schedule to conclude by the end of this month or early September, thankfully. That's been a long haul for the staff here, going over there every day and checking on it. But that'll be good once that's done. The COA railings, which we received money on a grant to make it safer for the seniors walking up that ramp and into the COA. Those have all been installed, and they've all been painted white to blend in with the rest of the walkway and the railings. So everything's been clean painted too. It looks nice. If you go up there, you'll see and it gives them a nice handrail to walk up instead of that that fence that they had where they couldn't actually grab. Excuse me. I just want to mention we had some new hires. There was appropriated funds at town meeting for an administrative assistant part-time in the veteran services, and the Shirley McEachern came on board today, actually, her first day of work. Very nice person, and she's looking forward to working with veterans and very dedicated that way.
Great.
We have, and we have a new payroll coordinator, Lynn Welsh. She took over for Denise Arsenault, and Denise Arsenault is actually going to pick up a position in the town clerk's office in a part-time manner. So she's staying on board, just in a different way. So those are some of the changes. We're looking forward to John Neely coming in at the end of the month. He will be the IT town manager, and that'll be a big help to the town hall and to the town buildings to have that done. So he's coming in. I just want to mention too, the last malfunction at the North Carver Water District. Since that time, we had started to establish a robocall, which will go out to all the users. We're trying to get a list of the full names and phone numbers of the users. We have a list with about 60% of the users on there, and that's being coordinated by Jill Martins in the planning office, and she kind of oversees some of the North Carver Water District stuff. So that's going forward. It'll make it easier. Right now, they would send out emails to people, and granted, people are driving home and they don't stop to look at an email, but they'll see that there's a call from the town or from North Carver Water District.
I think it's really important that we've discussed it before here, that we have a robocall set up, because people don't, unfortunately, you get buried in emails sometimes. And you're right, if you're driving home or you're getting ready for work in the morning, you're not checking your email, but you will get that call.
And what happens when the system goes down, everybody's just in, I don't want to say a panic, but you're thinking of other things and doing things. And one of the things you're not thinking of initially is to make sure there's notifications out there. So that'll be put on the front burner whenever this happens.
So if there's someone watching this meeting now and they think they may not be on the call list, what number would you recommend they call?
They would call 508-866-3400, and when you get the menu, you just put in Jill Martins.
Martins.
Yeah, or planning office.
Good,
So,
okay, thank you.
okay.
That's 3450,
So
the extension.
The extension?
Well, that's
Yeah,
the
well,
number.
it
If you
doesn't-
call that number.
it doesn't give an option to put an extension.
No, I know, but if you don't call 3400, but instead call 3450, you will get that off.
Okay.
Call town hall one way or
Yeah,
the
town
other.
hall.
Ask for Jill Martins, and you will get to the right person and get on that list.
And part of that, so in the North Carver Water District, I don't want to belabor this whole thing, but recently in consultation with the chair, Mike Palmieri, the chair of the select board, Mark Townsend, and myself, we talked about having a working group put together so that there'd be maybe 5 to 7 of town employees and town officials that will look at the effectiveness of the North Carver Water District.
And I think the Board of Health
concerns.
was involved in
And the
that as
Board of
well.
Health also, yeah, Board of Health agent. So to look at the effectiveness of the North Carver Water District and look at options that might be available to the town to either rectify it, which we just people mentioned, and I think Mike mentioned, water towers and other things, and or whether we look in another direction for a water source and commitment through another source. So getting a working group together, I think it'd be good so that each one can hear it and talk about it and then bring it back to each committee and see where we go with that. So my goal is to start it up in September and get this group together. I'd probably like to have 2 people on the select board, one from the commission, because 2 would make it a quorum, the health agent, maybe a Board of Health member, and Dave Seatontoff, who's kind of the water guru here, and 1 or 2 others on that. So I'll give more information on September 5th. It's just in its formation stage right now, and I'll let the board know. So that's the first thing. And likewise, talking to various people, I had meetings with the finance director, the school superintendent, and the school finance director to talk about setting up a kind of a budget process working group committee. Similar, I'm sorry. I got a scratchy throat. I hope I'm not getting sick on vacation.
The allergies.
But similar, having members of the town officials and employees, obviously, that are key employees like myself and the finance director, school officials, maybe a school committee member and the school finance director and so forth. And getting together and doing really at least 2 things. One is to agree upon a new timeline that'll be a process on how things will fall out. The second is to look at the financial policies, because they haven't been really looked at and updated. There's some conflicts in them that I see that we would need to make some suggested changes. And this group putting together those changes, those recommendations to the select board, to look at and make changes. So again, I'd be looking at a couple of members of the select board and so forth to put that together. And again, I want to get that going actually earlier, probably right after the September 5th meeting, within that same week, so that we can start that process early. I don't want the process to delay. Excuse me. Again, we had some hurdles to go over late last year, and I want to make sure that we're on track. So that's my goal going forward this month. And again, on September 5th, I'll be setting it forward to the board.
Okay.
Right?
Any
That's all I
questions
got
on the board?
That's all I can talk about.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Fennessy. All right, minutes, licenses, topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. We have the minutes of August 3rd. Is there a motion on those minutes?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Were you?
No, I wasn't.
You were not here, right? So 4-0? All right. Let's see, we have a one-day special license for the Carver Sportsman's Club.
There was
on
minutes
August-
from the other, was there, oh, I'm sorry, was
Nope.
there, that was it for minutes?
I think that's it for minutes.
Okay.
We have a one-day special license for the Carver Sportsman's Club on August 27th, 2023, from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Select Board announcements. Ms. Hewens?
I would like for people to keep in mind Shane's Give Thanks Food Pantry. As always, there's always a need, even though it's not a particularly special day.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman?
I just want to let people know that there's a fundraiser this Sunday at the Sportsman's Club for Balzerini family, helping them out with, Judy's going through some tough times right now, but there's going to be a cornhole tournament from 12 to 3, 3 to 4 raffles, and 4 to 8 Carver band Bad Decisions will be playing, so it should be a fun time, and it's a family event.
All right, great. Thank you. Mr. Ryan?
I hope everyone continues to enjoy your summer and stay safe.
Mr. Carter?
I don't have anything.
All right. I just have a couple of things. First of all, just a shout out to Carver resident Jim Foran, who's taking a cycling trip from Carver to California to help veterans. That's quite a quite an endeavor. I know I couldn't do it. He's leaving Carver on Friday, so good luck to Jim. And a few residents have reached out to me with questions about Carver Day on King Richard's Fair, specifically regarding tickets, about whether they would have to get their tickets online in advance dated tickets like every other day. So I did check with the fair, and that's not the case for Carver Day. So Carver Day is going to be handled like it always has. You go to the fair with your ID to show that you're a Carver resident. You'll go to the window and you'll get your tickets for Carver Day. So it will be the same way it always has been. So our next meeting is on September 5th. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn from open session and to reconvene in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 21A2. Subsection Chapter 21A2 to discuss strategy with respect to non-union personnel and for non-union negotiations, operations, and maintenance, and to return to open session.
Make that motion.
We have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Ryan?
Dan Ryan says aye.
Mr.
John
Carter?
Carter says aye.
Mark Townsend says aye.
Jim Hoffman says aye.
Sarah Hewen says aye.
All right, thank you. We are in executive session. Thank you. All right, I'll call the meeting back to order. And at this time, we will address our previous 6:40 agenda item. The item is ratify Operation and Maintenance Director David Siedentopf's employment contract. Is there a motion?
I'm so moved. I move that we approve the contract as amended and contingent on Mr. Siedentopf's approval of those amendments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it is unanimous. Again, our next meeting is September 5th. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn in a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. We are adjourned. Good night, everybody. Thank you, Area 58.